Okay, let's make a move. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, depending on where you're joining us from, and welcome to the participating webinar today. And it's going to be a roundtable debate to reflect on the challenges and opportunities to deliver on the commitments of the just concluded COP26 event in Glasgow. And we have in the room some incredible, when I mean incredible, I mean really incredible, truly amazing panelists and speakers. And we are hoping to gauge from them their perspectives, their insights on COP26 commitments, the general topic of climate change, the impact in Africa, and ultimately, what is the way forward? So after COP26, many commitments, what happens next? Now, this year at COP26, the Conference of Parties in Glasgow, there was an agenda to get countries to commit to developing a green economy through different strategies. And the meeting was attended by several African countries, obviously, and it formed the biggest emerging agenda in line with global environmental sustainability. And it also offered an opportunity to take the lead and transform this agenda in Africa through national policy engagement, alignment, stakeholder management, determination, and obviously the fulfillment of the intended nationally determined contributions, NIDCs. Obviously, these cannot happen without capacity building. It can happen without comprehensive education, national awareness, and at least implementation strategy. So you can actually go commit to fulfill an objective or a purpose. But if you haven't put the clear strategies in place to implement these commitments and comply with them, then it's a waste of time. Now, Africa is witnessing increasing advancement in technology and industrialization across a whole range of sectors. And there's a clear need for a continental and, in most cases, a national consideration of sustainable models that can impact and support green growth. And at the heart of this is what the RECIRCULATE and Urbanization projects at Lancaster University, funded by the Global Challenges Research Fund, try to achieve. Now, this year at COP26, I think there are about over 120 countries formed a coalition that made a pledge to stop deforestation by 2030. Now, how possible is that? I think I'll be asking the panelists this. To stop deforestation by 2030? Is this possible in Africa? Even though several countries signed up for this. And if it's possible, what is required to make this happen? What are the dimensions or factors that will prevent it from happening? Now, even though Africa contributes less than 4% of global carbon emissions, it is still a continent most vulnerable. I think one of the speakers will be speaking about this. To the impact of climate change. And obviously, you can see in different countries, drought and flooding, loss of soil fertility, increased precipitation, and rising temperatures. Now, what is the role of international funding in this discussion? How can it be used to crystallize and enhance climate action in Africa? Is climate change just one of those things we hear as a buzzword and everyone hears about it, but how does it actually impact on people's livelihoods and people's response and responsibilities? There's evidence, obviously, and experiences from Lancaster's project that we can actually make this happen. And at the heart of these is universities, and they could be good drivers of the effective eco-innovation discussion. I mean, for two reasons. They are anchors in co-designing, co-developing, co-delivering research-driven eco-innovation partnerships. And this has to be done in partnership with the private sector. But ultimately, and even more interestingly, in my view, they are also responsible for delivering high-level post-graduate training. So the young generation, who are the future of Africa. If the elderly ones have messed things up, how about the younger ones? How can you engage them? And so this will be the basis of our panel debate roundtable today, where we'll have contributions from different speakers from across the continent: Malawi, Botswana, Kenya, Zambia, Nigeria, and even the UK, to talk about in clear details what are the opportunities and challenges towards the commitments of COP26 and the general topic of climate change as it is. And so, on that note, I want to introduce the director of the RECIRCULATE and Urbanization projects, who also happens to be the Associate Dean for Internationalization or International Engagement for the Faculty of Science and Technology at Lancaster University. And he's also the principal investigator on these different projects. And recently, as a matter of fact, he was involved in being a panelist on a side event with the Ghana government at COP26. So he had some insights to kind of open the discussion before the panelists come on stage. It gives me absolute pleasure to welcome a professor of environmental microbiology, my good friend. And by the way, it's actually his other's birthday today. So on behalf of everybody in the room, I'm wishing Laura a happy birthday. Over to you, Keck.
Thank you thank you very much, Akan. That was a stirring introduction as usual, and very well done to position the objectives of this webinar. So if you permit me, I'm going to share my screen because, as with any academic, I have a presentation. Okay, so I will put it on presentation mode. Hopefully. Okay, so I hope everybody can see this. So, of course, the question for this webinar is what's next for Africa after COP26? And I am going to make some introductory comments and then lead us into some of the projects we're involved in that are relevant to climate change and other environmental issues with African partners. So, of course, one of the key elements to the situation that we find ourselves in is our increased production or release of global greenhouse gas emissions globally, and there's been a lot of debate over the last few years, the number of COP meetings that's identified the impact that developed countries are making in this mess that we find ourselves in. But actually, when you look at the data a little bit more closely, what you find is that actually 2/3 of global greenhouse emissions are actually coming from developing countries. So, and that data is from 2017, and then that's increased from 1990 at 45%. So 20-odd% increase. But what you have to recognize is that's not an even distribution, and that there are a small number of countries that are making a massive contribution to greenhouse gas emissions globally. And those are China, India, Brazil, Indonesia, and Iran. And that's gone up 10% in the last 17 or so years from 2000. And in total, it equates to around 48.8 gigatons of carbon dioxide equivalent. And this little diagram here actually sort of breaks that up, and you can see that China is a massive producer, followed by the USA, the European Union, India, Russia, Brazil, Indonesia, and so on. Now, challenges within Africa are numerous, of course, and caused by the emissions from fossil fuels and flare-off gas burning and so on. The burning of diesel for generation. Traffic is a big problem in the urban centres in African countries. We also have issues around indoor cooking with charcoal and kerosene, which is not particularly good for people's health. And of course, there's the amount of waste that we produce globally, but also within Africa as well. And sometimes this is managed through landfill. Other times it's indiscriminately released into the environment. And where you get a massive concentration, you can get the production of high levels of methane and carbon dioxide, which can often lead to fires starting in these waste dumps. Now, just following on from this and to focus in on some of the developing countries, again, data from 2017. So what we have here is the total global greenhouse gas emissions from Brazil, India, and Nigeria. And they're broken up into different sectors, as you can see. And there are different profiles for the different countries. So you can see that total greenhouse gas emissions for Brazil are around 2.3 gigatons CO2 equivalent. For India, it's about 3 gigatons of CO2 equivalent. And for Nigeria, largest country in Africa, it's only 0.3 gigatons of CO2 equivalent. So you can see that really Africa, in the grand scheme of things, is not really contributing very much in the way of greenhouse gas emissions compared to other countries. And when you look at Nigeria particularly, you see that the sort of breakup of emissions is dominated by two or maybe three sort of activities. The first one is fugitive emissions. So this is the release of gases from the oil and gas sector, for example, from waste and so on. And of course, agriculture as well. So moving on from that, Akan has already mentioned COP26 and the notion that it was much talked about, actually, the notion that after COP15 in Copenhagen in 2009, developed countries would make available $100 billion per year in climate finance to deal with this problem and the impacts on the developing world. However, it's come to light in recent years that, of course, this is just a bridge too far, and we're not meeting that obligation in any way, really. So instead of thinking about greenhouse gas emissions and who's particularly bad at it, we think about Africa in terms of vulnerability. Of course, so although Africa is not contributing, it's certainly at the sharp end of the stick when it comes to the impacts from climate change. And on this map, you can see that the countries in dark blue are those that are considered vulnerable, and there's a majority in Africa, of course, and sort of descriptors or behaviours of this impact from climate change are excessive rainfall, leading to flooding, problems around waste and contaminated water, drought, poor agricultural production, and soil erosion. So moving from that sort of larger picture to thinking about the projects that we've been involved in with African partners over the last few years, waste has focused quite heavily in our discussions and in our research, and we generally see waste as being valueless, of course. Sub-Saharan Africa throws away about 62 million tonnes of organic waste, solid waste per year, and of that, around 60 to 70% of that solid waste is actually organic, so it's decomposable. Some of it ends up in landfill, some of it is burnt, some of it is dumped indiscriminately into the environment. Wherever it ends up, as I mentioned before, it can decompose to carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide, all greenhouse gases, but it can also lead to contamination of surface and groundwaters, leading to impacts on human health with various diseases, waterborne diseases, and of course impact on the environment as well. So what we're thinking about here really is how do we reduce greenhouse gas emissions, particularly from waste? How can we secure clean and sustainable supplies of water, energy, and food? And how can we manage our waste through circular economy-like solutions? And this is one proposition here, so-called virtuous circular economy, where we have our waste, we collect it from sites of disposal, whether it's in communities or in the environment. We take that to bioenergy processing, in this case anaerobic digestion, to produce biogas, which is combustible and can be converted into energy, heat and light. As with any process, industrial process, this produces waste, so-called digestate. And we know that digestate is actually very nutritious, containing a lot of nitrogen and phosphorus. So it can be used as a sustainable alternative fertilizer, but it can also be used for clever irrigation practices to support food production sustainably and healthy food production sustainably. Again, agriculture produces waste, so that can then feed back into the loop, thereby producing this circular approach. So the projects that are directly relevant here are the RECIRCULATE project. Many of you on this call will have heard me talk about this before, and that's entitled Driving Eco-Innovation in Africa, Capacity Building for a Safe Circular Water Economy, where water is at the heart, water protection is at the heart of this, protection of human health, protection of environmental health, the production of sustainable energy, and of course, food security and agricultural productivity. Now, of course, we've received a lot of funding for this from the British government to the tune of about £7 million. The funding is coming to an end in 2022. And what do we do then? Do we actually just say, right, okay, we've done the project, let's move on to another project? Or do we actually think about how we can extend the good work, all the capacity building, the research that's been done in this project beyond the project? And so we've been working with our entrepreneurial colleagues, businesses, policy, to actually explore how we can continue to drive this, these activities in the real world. And this is absolutely crucial to the continuation of the project, of the activities beyond the funding. Capacity building is also a massive element with this across many different sectors. African research active universities, the private sector, policy sector, but also schools as well. That's where the young entrepreneurs, the young change makers that go from school to university, or maybe even go from school to the big wide world, can really make a change. And of course, we have to take our communities with us to benefit from, so that there is a benefit to society. And that's again where stimulating this entrepreneurial behaviour, looking for future investment and commercialisation is so crucial. So from the RECIRCULATE project, we were lucky enough to win some additional funding under the Global Research Translation Award opportunity to support a project entitled Accelerating the Adoption of Circular Sanitation Demonstration Systems for Improved Health Outcomes. And of course, this is taking the science, the research, the thinking, the capacity building from the RECIRCULATE project and actually implementing it, applying it through this funding route. And what we've sought to do is to build two demonstrators, one in a school in Ghana and the other in a university campus in Nigeria, to explore the possibilities of developing solutions to waste management, improved health, sustainable energy and food security, to using educational outlets to gain acceptance within students across schools and universities to build generational and cultural change to embrace the circular economy as we move forward. And of course, as I've already mentioned before, to develop new entrepreneurial business opportunities to maximise the economic benefit of this. So we've built the digesters in Ghana and Nigeria. With colleagues, of course, we're looking for simple, cost-effective and robust designs that are fit for purpose. And if they do break down, that are easily repairable. We've engaged with schools, we've engaged with school teachers, we've engaged with universities, excuse me, to drive the knowledge exchange and capacity building elements. And of course, we've also engaged with communities as well, stakeholder communities, people who might actually directly benefit in their place of work, or indeed with communities that the schools and the universities are embedded within. So just to wrap this up, really, we're through these activities, we're working with communities through our schools, universities, research institutes, NGOs, SMEs and policymakers to highlight the value and the positive impacts of the circular economy in human and environmental health. And we're also looking to engage with entrepreneurial drivers, SMEs, to support the development of robust, reliable and fit-for-purpose technologies, and also offer training to these people who want to engage with this as well. So just finally, as Akan mentioned, we were fortuitous to be invited to attend a side event with the government of Ghana, organised by the Hat Off Foundation in Glasgow several weeks ago. I guess the highlights of this were that colleagues from Lancaster actually met the president of Ghana very briefly, but he in that discussion highlighted that he was aware of the good work that was going on in West Africa and particularly in Ghana. And Akan and myself were involved in a webinar side event as well with ministers and other senior officials from the Ghanaian government. So on that note, I'd just like to finish off by thanking you for listening to this introduction and just highlight that we have a real powerhouse of different people from across the continent contributing to this webinar to debate, to reflect on the challenges and opportunities to deliver the commitments to COP26. And on that note, I'd just like to acknowledge the partners that we've been working with collaboratively over the years. And thank you for listening, and hand back to Akan. Akan, back to you.
Thank you very much, Prof. That's absolutely fantastic. And I think it kind of puts in perspective what the opportunities are. Obviously, bedeviled by the challenges on different levels. But I guess that's the point, really. The point is the fact that we have to do our best. We have to drive change and make change happen. Now, don't worry, I won't bore you because I've got more qualified people to talk about this topic today. I've got an incredible panelist team who would kind of delve into the relevance of the commitments at COP, but also its relationship with individuals on the ground. So how does it relate to the market woman? How does it relate to a rural farmer? Who cares? Why is it important? So we're going to break this down into two sections. So the first section will be, I'll be inviting two panelists to speak about this topic, and I'll be asking them direct questions. And by the way, if you are on the call and you have any questions, please try and leave the questions on the chat section and I'll pick them up. Very, very important. If you've got any question whatsoever or comments for the panelists as they proceed, please leave these on the chat section and I'll pick it up. Thank you very much. Good. So the first person I want to invite is Dr. Gloria Ozzo, who is a postdoctoral research fellow at the Technical University of Kenya. She got her PhD in literature from the University of Nairobi in 2018, and most of her work has been on how culture enhances social interaction and community development. Now, Dr. Gloria Ozzo is very passionate on studies that deal with communication, leadership, and human development. She's an expert in gender inclusivity and community development for the improvement and sustainability of humanity, its environment, and social interactions. Welcome to the panel, Gloria. And also, to go alongside her is Dr. Emmanuel Ogbomida. Ogbomida is a director of research at the Copperbelt University in Zambia. He's also the chief research officer at the National Center for Energy and Environment at University of Benin in Nigeria. He's also a visiting research scientist and lecturer at the Hokkaido University in Japan, and recently was appointed the vice chair on UNDP's Accelerator Lab project, implementing climate change and energy experimentation program in Zambia. He's a renowned ecotoxicologist and environmental forensics expert. Welcome to the panel, Emmanuel Ogbomida. So, just a question. I'm going to ask both of you. So, first and foremost, I'll ask Gloria first. Gloria, so at COP26 in Glasgow this year, over 100 countries of the world, including several African countries, signed on agreed to stop deforestation by 2030. Now, the question is that possible for Africa, in your view, considering how ingrained deforestation is with livelihoods? And if it's possible, how can it be achieved? And if not, why? So I'm asking that question to both Gloria and Emmanuel, but I think Gloria should go first. Over to you, Gloria.
Thank you, Dr. Akan. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Okay, my answer will be yes and no.
Yes and no. Oh, wow, that's interesting.
Yes, my answer will be yes and no. One thing is to agree, and another thing is to implement. So for me, I believe for the yes, I believe that whatever goal one sets his mind on and works towards that, that person can achieve it. Including to stop deforestation, which the African countries by their representatives, that is our leaders, have agreed to accomplish by 2030. And the no is because it would demand a lot of work, sincerity, openness, and selflessness. So when we talk about sincerity, the grassroots, it has to do with grassroots approach, where our leaders have to convince us that what they ask us to do, that they themselves are doing it. Another thing is so it should be more than making policies. Yes, we know there are a lot of policies there. Like here in Kenya, there is. I think there is also in Nigeria and other countries, like in Namibia, Botswana, and the rest of them. But one thing is making the policies, and another thing is providing a realistic solution or implementation of those policies, because it needs collaboration, which also should include gender inclusivity. So when we talk about for the yes, I'll go for the yes, the no, okay. But for the yes, if we really want to achieve this, we need to go down to the roots. Because when we come to the city, yes, we all know it, but then there are people that don't even know about it. There are people that when you tell them don't cut the tree that you inherited from your ancestors, because here in Africa, most of the things we have are inherited from our ancestors, the trees, the land, and the rest of them. So if you tell them now, don't cut the trees, do this, what else are you putting in place that when they don't cut the trees, in order to make a living, they will have that one to fall on? And this means that we have, or there should be, we have to do what? Increase awareness. And that awareness is empowering our local farmers with the necessary knowledge by engaging them and teaching them how to properly manage lands and its benefits, and show them the benefits they are going to receive when they're able to manage the land, not just about cutting trees, but about their health and the rest of it. Another one is encouraging planting of trees. How do they plant trees? But maybe the government should put in place one or two solutions to planting trees, because some of them, like here in Kenya, there's a seedling distribution where you are able to buy even the little ones very cheap. So even if they want to plant trees, where can they get the trees that they're supposed to plant? And who is even going to lecture them or take them through the ways that they need to plant these trees so that it will be beneficial to everyone, including the environment? Can I continue?
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you so much. Oh, no, I think it's fine. No, we can hear you. I think it's fine. So I'll come back to you, Gloria. But I want Emmanuel to weigh in very quickly. Emmanuel, are you on the call? So Emmanuel, you are obviously an environmentalist, and you've been involved with some climate change mitigation programs. Now, when a commitment of that nature is made, and let's stop deforestation by 2030. In your view, is that a possibility? If it's possible, what needs to be done? Because we are tired of just commitments but no action. Emmanuel.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Akan. And participant, I welcome you to this very important webinar. I would like to state categorically that without missing words, in Africa, if not very difficult. This is because forests are vital for the welfare of millions of people, especially the rural poor. Population rely directly on forests for their livelihood, including food security. That is not all. Access to affordable and reliable clean energy sources has remained one of the biggest challenges facing Africa. And available statistics have shown that over 70% of African population are without access to clean energy sources, while over 80% rely on biomass for cooking and heating, especially in the form of firewood and charcoal. So, unless African authorities provide cheapest form of clean energy to replace the pernicious wood fuel and charcoal for the poorest people of the continent, stopping deforestation would be a mirage. Poverty has also remained one of the main drivers of deforestation in Africa.
Okay.
And African leaders should not just pretend to be committed to apply themselves to combating global warming, when the vast majority of African population still live in acute poverty and only make a living by going to the forest to get firewood for domestic fuel and agriculture. Therefore, if Africa will really achieve or the declaration, which means stopping deforestation by 2030, then
2030, yeah.
Yes, African countries must, as a matter of urgency, begin to come up with programs and policies to replace the pernicious energy technology, such as maybe improved and efficient biomass cook stoves and massive deployment of biogas technology as clean cooking fuels. Also, government should build a more sustainable rural economies to enhance modern agriculture, reduce illegal logging and cutting of trees for charcoal production, which has become one of the biggest Africa's informal economy. Statistics has also shown that 65% of global charcoal production is from Africa. And there is available market from the international community to always harvest this product from Africa. So where do you get this charcoal from? Methods to produce this charcoal. There should also be a deliberate policy to change the deployment of alternative renewable energy technology. There is need for us to aggressively deploy alternative rural communities, and this will help to mitigate deforestation. Otherwise, we end in futility. Thank you.
Futility. Thank you so much. That's absolutely incredible. I mean, you mentioned the fact that that's quite a huge percentage. 80% Africans rely on biomass as a form of energy. And so because of the poverty level, for that to be changed, you need to almost provide an alternative to make it happen. Now, I wasn't going to do this before, but I think it makes sense. So I'm going to introduce, there are two other panelists on the call, very incredible panelists. I'm going to introduce them because I wanted to jump on this question as well. And so I have on the call Professor Wales Segini. So Wales is a professor of fisheries science and director of research at Mzuzu University, Malawi. Now, Wales has a PhD, an MSc in fisheries science, and a BS in agriculture. His main expertise area are in bioeconomic modeling for management of environmental and natural resources, population dynamics, and stock assessment with ecological modeling. That's Wales. Now, but I also have on the call a very important speaker and panelist who is Dr. Dimani Mpoeleng. So Dimani is a director of technology transfer at Botswana International University of Science and Technology, BUST. He has a PhD in computer science from the University of Newcastle upon Tyne, specializing in fault tolerance distribution systems. His interests are in computational genomics, high-performance computing, UAVs, ad hoc networks, and computer vision. He is currently working on research in devising models of energy and knowledge transfer in viral products and services. That's demanding. So Professor Wales, you're the call. Please, my question still remains. My question is, there's been a commitment that there should be the stopping of deforestation by 2030. Is this possible in Africa? And if it is, what should be done, Wales? And also the money, I'll come back to you for the same question. Over to you, Prof.
Thank you so much, Dr. Akan, and the rest of the members listening here. My response would be that it is good always to make commitments.
Okay.
But these commitments, unfortunately for our context, African context, we tend to make commitments out of the effects and not focusing on the real challenges, real causes of the effect that we're seeing.
Okay.
For me, those commitments, our leaders would have reflected on the fundamental underlying factors that are contributing to deforestation in Africa. We have key fundamental underlying factors. The energy issue that my colleague Emmanuel just talked about.
Yes.
Yeah, energy is a serious issue for Africa. And for example, like here in Malawi, imagine nearly 96% of the population, they depend on wood and charcoal for their energy at household level. Imagine.
96%. That's high.
Yeah.
My goodness.
And imagine, look at the electricity connectivity is only at 15%. So if we neglect this aspect, there is no way what we are defining can be achieved. We also have another underlying factor, which is agricultural development. Our country, for example, Malawi depends on agriculture as its backbone of economy. And imagine 85% of the population, they live in rural areas where their livelihood is agriculture. Where do they get their farms? They get their farms by cutting down trees to open up new farming areas. And imagine also new farms. Imagine also that there are some sectors within the country that are still practicing shifting cultivation. And this shifting cultivation is coming into play because they are hunting for fertile soils. Fertile soils because they can't afford to purchase the required inputs, like the inorganic fertilizers, they can't afford. So this also connects to what my colleague Emmanuel talked about in terms of the affordability, but also accessibility of the required inputs. So people are forced to open up new farms in order to get at least fertile soils where they can cultivate without applying any inorganic fertilizers. At the same time, we have a problem of population boom. So this population boom has also exerted pressure on the already limited resources we're talking about, forestry as well as land. So people are scrambling for the already limited land area that we have. But at the same time, we are seeing that settlement is also an issue. Where do people settle amid this pressure on land and increase in population? At the same time, Africa, we are also talking about industrialization and urbanization. Unfortunately, we seem not to have planners. So our industrialization and urbanization is growing, but as if there are no plans. That's another serious issue that is also causing deforestation in Africa. Yeah. So when I look at all this, if the governments are not able to address these within the period that they have made the commitments, I don't see how we'll be able to achieve this stopping deforestation by 2030. Because only if we address these underlying factors, I feel we'll be able to curtail or to stop this deforestation. Without
That's a really insightful entry point, Prof. Because you are saying about the fact that obviously there are the effects, but there are underlying factors that are triggering these effects. I think that's incredible. I'm going to come back to you, Prof, but I want to give Demani a chance to comment at this point. Demani, so you work in the technology sector, and you are currently responsible for transfer of technology in viable products and services. In your view, I mean, like the other speakers, or do you have a separate view from this? Why is it commitment being made, and can they be achieved?
Oh, thank you, Chair. Thank you to you all. A little bit nervous because I'm the least qualified in the panel from computer science, but my role as a technology transfer director catapulted me into the other side of science and engineering. These days, I consider myself a biochemist now because lots of projects are in chemistry, bio, and in particular, coal. But let me go back to your question, because that one I'll cover in my second question about how to stop deforestation. There are many conflicting priorities that my colleagues here already mentioned them. But here is an issue about trees or the green biomass that we rely on. It is not just about energy. It is everything. And forest is everything to us in Africa, whether you're talking about housing, roofing, craftsmanship, material, crafts, we all go for the trees. Now, the problems are cutting across. They are not just on the energy issue. Solving an energy issue in Africa will not stop deforestation. I don't want to mention about the obvious, which is illegal logging, which we all know normally happens in equatorial regions. I'm from the South Desert, so I don't know much about the forest. So if we want to address deforestation, let's not just focus on energy sources, but livelihood, because we use trees for many things. So with that, I think. Oh yes, the other one. Yeah, I was thinking of. I'm surprised where it ended up. It's difficult to say stop deforestation, and then don't use any other carbon emitting technology for energy. I mean, how do you do that except just going or narrowing ourselves to a more hard to implement solar technology? So when you say stop deforestation, then you should sort of be flexible on the carbon emitting technologies like coal. So in fact, ironically, coal could be a solution to stop deforestation, in the sense that if you could develop technologies that can lower carbon emissions but still give energy to our houses and our households, that would be good. I don't know what happened to when I was growing up, some many decades ago. What happened to, I used to grow up in Botswana into families where almost every other household they had this special cast iron. I'm not sure whether they were manufactured in Zambia or Zimbabwe. Cast iron coal stoves. I know they would not really cut it these days because they'll be using coal, but they could actually stop deforestation, the coal stoves. So with that, that was my comment, Chair. That is difficult to. We can use bed greenhouse technologies to stop deforestation. It's a conundrum. Okay, thank you, Chair. Back to you. Another question, I think, is coming later on. Hello, Chair. Can you all hear me? Maybe you are speaking alone.
Hi, Dimani. It appears it appears we've lost Akan. Just 1 second. I'm just going to I think he's having trouble with his internet connection because he's in Nigeria at the moment. So if you can bear with us, we'll try and get this back.
But was I okay? My audio was it okay?
It was absolutely crystal clear, Dimani. It was great. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't mind repeating that if he comes back. I could hear that his audio was really bad anyway.
No problem, Dimani.
Hello, it's Paul here in Lancaster. Can you hear me?
Hi, Paul. We can hear.
We can hear
you. Just in the meantime, while we're waiting to see if we can get hold of Akan, I see there's a question in the chat there from Francis Mwanza that says the main reason why people in the charcoal business are failing to stop cutting down trees is because they don't have other sources of income. For example, Zambia is ranked #1 when it comes to deforestation, and when these charcoal burners are asked why they can't stop deforestation, their response is that it's their only source of income and don't have alternative sources. So Francis's question is, how rigid are the policies being put in place going to be to curb deforestation? Do any of our panelists have any opinion or response there regarding the policies that need to be put in place to curb deforestation? I think it's a very important point there that Francis is making, that it's butting up against people's real challenges in terms of their incomes. If you stop people's income, what are you putting in place of that, and how are you dealing with that? So does any of our panelists? Gloria, please, over to you.
Hello. Making rigid policy that stops deforestation, to me, I think that policy will be targeting only the poor. Because now, how do you, in your comfortable home, you people gather together, you make policy that should stop someone from cutting the trees that are in his or her land. And you know that this is where she makes her living from, or he makes his living from. Then maybe there's a penalty that can follow that policy, maybe arrest, jail, or whatever. But then this person doesn't have other means of livelihood. I think that would be unfair, and that would make the deforestation agreements or plans not to be achievable. The best way to do it, or another way to do it, is to find an alternative, provide jobs for them, and create awareness, let them know, let them decide on their own that this thing is not good. And because it's not good, there are other ways we can make a living without endangering ourselves, our future generations. Because when you endanger the environment, you also endanger not just yourself, you endanger every living creatures, and you endanger even the generations to come. So making rigid policy, I'll say it will not make them to achieve the aim of stopping deforestation in Africa. It will not. There are a lot of graduates there without a job. Some of them cut the trees to raise money for businesses. And now you are telling them don't cut the trees, but you are there in the city building a lot of estates, building companies, and the little one they have, you are telling them, no, don't make use of them. You have to provide a tangible reason and practical solutions to convince them not to do that.
Thank you, Gloria. I think that's a really powerful and well reasoned argument there. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to contribute to that? And the other thing I think that Gloria touched on there as well is about sort of the infrastructures in place for enforcing and monitoring those sort of policies. If you have rigid policies, how are the infrastructures in place in order to enforce those? Coming from a Western point of view, we have very well structured. Wales has got his hand up there. Maybe Wales has got a point there too.
Yeah, thank you so much. Just to add on the same, that I think I'll give an example of Malawi. Malawi, at least they tried to come up with a national charcoal strategy. The national charcoal strategy was almost moving towards legalizing charcoal in a legal way by promoting the value chains around the charcoal. The strategy is intended to promote individuals to own forestry, where you can plant your trees, manage them, take care of them, harvest them, produce your charcoal, and you can transport them anywhere you want to. But I think we have had also challenges in terms of implementing that strategy. I believe if this strategy was implemented, maybe it would have been a better way of supporting charcoal producers, because in a way they will also be able to protect the environment through management of their forests. Thank you.
Thank you, Wales. Does anybody else have any initiatives that from other countries other than Malawi that they would that are relevant here and that they would like to share? Or if not, maybe some Emmanuel, have you got?
Yeah, just to add, to make the policy rigid is more or less, in my own view, would be demonic, because Africa operates a kind of land tenure system, and you cannot legislate or make policies on a land and to take advantage of left behind. We can, produce furniture. We can do a kind of a farming system, which is more or less like a shifting cultivation, leaving the land to fallow for some time. Then we continue to slash the forest as we allow the land to fallow, depending on the size of the land that has been bequeathed to you. So how can an individual who do not own that land begin to tell me that I should not use that land for productive purpose? We still have problem with food security, and we are still grappling on how we can feed the growing population. So making the policy rigid will amount to more or less a policy somersault, which nobody will be ready to abide with, because we'll continue to, if you do not provide alternatives in terms of modernized agriculture, reliable source of energy, and managing the growing population, then we'll continue to live on what God has left for us, which is the forest. I think we now begin to think, what other ways can we evolve to ensure that our forests will continue to perform the duties that is supposed to perform, which is carbon sinking and other things. So I think that what we should begin to think now is innovative ideas, not for them to lord over us, to say we cannot cut down this tree, and if we do, what will happen? Because it's my right. Thank you.
Thank you, Emmanuel. I think now what we're gonna do is we've got an exercise a little bit more interactive part of the session. I'm going to hand over to Alan, who's going to introduce that.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Apologies for the challenges that we've had today, but we can move on. And thank you very much, Paul, for driving, and also from the panelists as well for the discussions that we've just had. So we're going to do just something a little bit more interactive. So some of you will be familiar with Mentimeter. I'm just putting a couple of links in the chat to some questions, and we would like to get some feedback from you. We'd like to get some, idea of where of your thoughts and these are really simple questions, but hopefully can challenge some debate. So I've just put the questions in the chat now, and I'll share my screen with the questions, and we can see what the voting, as it were, happens. Hang on, sorry. Done this. Yeah. So the first question is a very simple one. Do you fully understand the relevance of COP? And please be honest. Please be absolutely honest with the question. There's no right or wrong answer here. But I know there's been a lot about COP26. There's been a lot of explanation about, or a lot of noise around it. But do you fully understand the relevance of it? That's quite interesting. That's so we've got one person who said no. That's interesting. If you keep your voting coming in. That's interesting. Another person has put no. Oh, no's actually starting to get close to. I'd be quite interested to hear if anybody wants to share why they've said no. Is there, if you put your hand up, we can try and unmute you. But if anybody would like to share the reasons why they say no. So we've got 6 that are saying that they understand it. 7. So is there anybody who would like to share? And I can understand if you wouldn't, but at the same time, it'd be interesting to see. Okay, that's quite evenly spread. Or as Sam said, feel free to share your reasoning in the chat and we can share that with people. Okay, so that's quite evenly spread, which, to be honest with you, I would perhaps, well, I don't know whether I would expect that or not. So it's quite interesting to me that that there are people who don't actually fully understand the relevance of the week's events that during COP and everything else. But that's quite interesting. So what I will do, we'll move on to the next question. So question 2 is, what is the most important consideration if African countries must comply with the agreement of stopping deforestation? Now, I know we've talked a lot about that this morning or this afternoon, depending on where you are. The alternative livelihoods seems to be the so there are 4 options: strict regulations, alternative livelihoods, awareness creation, or now that should say international support. I think that's interesting. Alternative livelihoods. I think that with what we were talking about deforestation, for agriculture, I think there does need to be consideration of what other livelihoods that people could pursue. Strict regulations. Somebody's put strict regulations. I think that is important. That I think that it can only really work if it's if there are actually regulations in place for to make sure that it happens. Okay, so nobody thinking about awareness creation or international support. That's interesting. We've got one. It's like I've prompted people to do that. So awareness creation. of course, I mean, people need to be aware of, you know, why it's a good idea to do deforestation. I think you have to win hearts and minds. I think that's interesting. I've just realised that I've done the questions in the wrong order, so we've skipped ahead onto question 3, but I'll come back to question 2 and question 4. But that's very interesting that most people, so people can feel free to share your reasoning or why you say that in the chat, as Sam has said. Because it would be interesting to see what your kind of your outlook on that is with regards deforestation and whether the idea of Africa being able to comply with it. So what I'm going to, that's quite interesting. They're going back to the fully understanding and relevance of COP, that the no's have overtaken the yeses. That is really interesting. But anyway, so moving on to question 2. So this is going back to question 2. I apologize for the so at COP26, over 100 countries, including African countries, agreed to stop deforestation by 2030. Now, do you think this is possible to achieve in Africa? Is this something that you feel this could be achievable by Africa, whether in the future or as it stands now? Okay, it seems that people
I think Alan, going back.
Oh, you back, Akan? Sorry.
Yeah, I am. Yeah, so I'm just saying, going by what the speakers and panelists have spoken about earlier on, I worry if it's possible actually. But let's see what the audience think.
Yeah.
Their possibility.
It doesn't seem to be working because there seems to be people who have voted, but nothing coming up on the.
Maybe it's taking time to pick up. So at COP26, over 100 countries, including African countries, agreed to stop deforestation by 2030. Is this possible to achieve?
We've got quite a few messages in the chat now as well for elaborating on the answers.
So let's see. People are thinking. Eunice says no, it's not possible. Francis says if alternative livelihoods are put in place, people may consider shifting. Okay. Tawango says, what strategy is this research team going to take in order to convince governments from different parts of Africa to actually be able to implement those solutions towards deforestation? Okay. Interesting. Okay.
Hello there. Can you hear me?
Very clearly, Dimani. So
yes,
it's looking like
I'm not sure what
the room is divided.
Oh yeah, because I couldn't see the links. I was wondering what is.
I see.
Despite my qualifications, I was really confused. Thank you.
Okay, that's fine. So I think the room is divided. So 5 persons think it's not possible to achieve, and 4 persons think it's possible to achieve. I think other folks in the room. Let me see the chat section. And please feel free to respond in the chat too. Kimotho thinks it's not possible. Taiwo says it's very possible. Taiwo, you must be an enthusiastic person. Well, obviously, Taiwo has a caveat. It's possible, but we need to make possible alternatives available. That's interesting. Okay. So, Alan, can we move to the next question, please? Because I like to ask all the panelists just one more question before they go. Just one more question each before they go. So next question. Next question is, okay, what is the most important consideration if African countries must comply with the agreement of stopping deforestation? And by a long margin, it's obviously clear to everybody that alternative livelihood is what is the issue. And that makes sense to me. Because if deforestation is what's driving current livelihoods, for there to be a shift, there has to be an alternative proposition, which I think makes sense. So I think I agree with that with everybody. This really sounds good. Last question, Alan. What categories of partners are the most to blame? I know you like giving blames, and most people do. The most to blame for Africa's deforestation activities. Who's the most to blame? Who is the most to blame? Okay. Is it government? Is it industries, rural communities, or academia? Is it government? Is it industries? Is it rural communities, or academia? Who is the most to blame? Kirk, are you on the call? Why do you think it's the people are going for government? I think the other folks are going to rural communities. Nobody seems to be talking about research or academia.
Well, I'm really glad to hear that, because I'd like to hope that we were not to blame, but hopefully offer up some solutions, at least in part with partners. I mean, I think in some ways when you look at COP26, all the countries in the world turned up to debate this, and COP has been going for a number of years now, and it seems that with it, in spite of all of this debate and all of this goodwill that comes out of these meetings, the actual product of that, the actions are not really being delivered. So I can understand why people might be a little upset with the government.
But the next category that people think are responsible to blame are rural communities. Maybe I would imagine because they're the ones cutting the forest. But if it's ingrained with their livelihoods, how is that their fault? If they don't cut the forest or cut the trees, they can't survive. So I can see why there's a preference for those two folks. But anyway, I think it was just to get some interaction going in the room while we can now return to the panelists. I've got just one more question because I want to wrap it up as soon as possible. It was just to kind of assess these commitments at COP26, the impact around climate change. We've had very exciting conversations and good discussions from folks in the room with respect to how might we be able to comply and what should be done. But I think maybe to kind of wrap it up, I want to ask the panelists just one more question, if I may. So let me start with Gloria. Are you still on the call, Gloria?
Yes, I'm here, but I can't see the chat section.
Okay, so, yes, fantastic. So Gloria, I want to ask you quickly, yeah. So my question to you is now Keck mentioned in his presentation, I think other speakers spoke about this, that Africa contributes less than 5% to global carbon emissions, but it remains the continent as most vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. So my point is, now everybody seems to think government is the most to blame. In your view, what can government and universities, because you can't tell me universities have no contribution whatsoever. I know Keck was happy nobody mentioned him, but the point is, you're an academic, Gloria. So what can government and most importantly universities do to help develop a green economy towards these mitigations? Gloria.
Okay, I would say that for the government to achieve this, they have to, and the universities, they have to collaborate. But then I'll say it goes beyond that collaboration, because sometimes the university, the administrators and all that, they can run everything, they can collaborate, but then the researchers on ground don't even know what they are doing. The students don't even know what they are doing. Even myself, when I was in the university, nobody taught me of this, but this is something that should be there in the curriculum, where every student is taught of the benefits of encouraging green economy. And again, we have a lot of, in Nigeria, we have a lot of graduates from engineering and the rest of them. They should be encouraged to practice what they've studied, their professions. And how do they practice it? Some of them will need finance for that. The government should be able to support them. And for the lecturers, the government should be able to invest in research that has to do with green economy, that has to promote green, that promotes green economy and the rest of it. And even when they've researched, the government should also listen to them, because one thing is to invest, is to promote. Sometimes they do it just to answer names. They do it just to say, okay, that during my regime, I supported University of Nigeria, I supported University of Benin, I supported this, I supported that. No, it shouldn't end there. Those people that have been supported should be able to produce whatever outcome that the research they've done has produced. So they should be able to produce the outcome of their research. So you're speaking
about, I guess you're speaking about, yes.
And even when they produce it,
impact.
Okay, yes. Even when they produce it, the government themselves should call them and listen to them. And the government themselves should please put in those people that are qualified on those in the positions that have to do with encouraging green economy. Because sometimes, like there in our home in Nigeria, they just put because they know you. But now they should look for people that are good in those areas. And again, they should create more awareness by going to the interior villages to tell them the importance of protecting the environment. And then if they formulate a policy or they formulate policies, they should make sure that the policy is for everybody. If you're a big man, if you're a small man, if you're a little man, that policy should be implied to you. You should be able to do what to obey it, to respect it, and to live by it. Not making it for other people.
Thank you, Gloria. Thanks, Gloria. I'm going to come back to you in a minute. I want to go to Emmanuel, if I may. Emmanuel, so now let's talk about energy, because you are the chief research scientist at the National Center for Energy and Environment. So obviously, we speak about livelihoods being ingrained in the deforestation discussion. My point to you is, or my question is, as a final question is, so what is the role of alternative energies then, and why are these alternative energy sources beyond just wood or biomass not being taken up in Africa? What is the problem, and how can we resolve this? Emmanuel.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Akan. I would like to state first that what is really renewable energy? This is energy that is normally derived from natural resources. They are not finite or exhaustible. So they help to mitigate the impact of climate change because they do not produce greenhouse gas emissions, and they also play an important role in mitigating climate change strategies. For us to be able to, sufficiently address the issue of deforestation, there must be a deliberate attempt to deploy these renewable energies to the communities, especially the rural community. Despite Africans still produce less than 4% of the global greenhouse gas emission, there is need for us to begin to work seriously to deploy these renewable energies to the community. Now, what are these renewable energies that we need to deploy? They are normally referred to as hydro energy, the solar energy, wind energy, geothermal, and bioenergy. And as a research scientist, what do we need to do so that we can infuse into the renewable energy into our daily activities in order to reduce the emission rate that is causing serious problem, that is becoming problematic and reducing environmental integrity, is for us to conduct more research, come up with innovations that is acceptable to the rural community, such as the development of efficient biomass cook stove, where we can use and use the same briquettes to use them on the cook stove for us to be able to make our food in our communities. If we have this, then there will be less pressure on the forest. Africa is also blessed with abundant municipal waste resources. And what do we need to do? Most of our wastes are biodegradable. And as research scientists, there is need for us to begin to work in that direction by converting these biodegradable waste into biogas. And this biogas, when deployed to the rural community, can also help to generate, for instance, electricity, and can also be used, to prepare our foods in our homes. Also, we have avalanche agricultural residues from our own agricultural practices. Yeah. And these agricultural residues can be converted to either briquettes, either bioethanol or biodiesel.
So it sounds to me, Doc, that I mean, the opportunities in the alternative energy space is quite wide and varied. And I think obviously, I think the point is, so everybody's got a contributing factor, or everybody's got a contributing energy to make this happen. The researchers should be doing their job. Our government, like Gloria was speaking about, needs to put in place good policies. Industry needs to engage, but obviously it has to be commercial. So on the back of that, let's talk about money for a minute. I'm Professor Will Six-Guinea. I want to come to you about money. So when Keck was presented, he did mention that at the Paris Agreement, was it the Paris Agreement? So Copenhagen Agreement, there was an agreement reached that there should a promise of about $100 billion yearly made available for developing economies who are most vulnerable to the impacts of climate change to actually use it for adaptation and mitigation parameters and models. But the point is, this hasn't been kept till date. So my question to you is there a role of funding in ensuring that African governments and organizations are able to fight the impacts of climate change? And what is that role, Prof? Let's talk about money.
Thank you so much, Akan. You're right. When you look at the African context, we are fragile or we are vulnerable. Even when you look at our economies, our budgets are there just to support our consumption. When you look critically, even in our budgets, you find that most of the African countries, our development funding from within is less than 25%. So it becomes a challenge, therefore, to support contingency plans, which may result because of climate change impacts. So therefore, it is important that this funding is made available in order to support the building of resilience of these African states. And in so doing, we'll be able to mitigate and adapt to the impacts of this climate change. This is what I would say.
Climate change.
No.
Interesting. Now, I think so. Obviously, funding is very, very important. There's a dependence on international funding. I guess the point is, if the merits, the benefits of climate change mitigation is obvious, I guess the point is, national governments should also consider integrating funding measures within their budgets for these specific reasons. I think that's very, very vital. But I guess also there's also the dimension of the commercial value of a green economy, and there's enough evidence to show that green economy makes business sense. But I guess the point is understanding that business sense and the commercialization value in African governments, in African economies, makes it very, very vital. And this has to be driven by information awareness, but also by leadership. So I'm going to come to you, Dimane, for your last question. So, and I know you're from Botswana, and Botswana's got like huge coal deposits. Okay, so one of the remits or the agreements reached at COP26 this year in Glasgow was the fact that there should be a reduction in the use of coal, because ultimately this impact on climate change through the emission of greenhouse gases is substantial. My question is, there's a huge push for green economy in Africa as a way to adapt to climate change challenges. So for you, what is the future of Botswana's huge coal deposits then? Dimane.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I really have to start by being honest here.
Okay, let's be honest. We like that. I think we need honesty. Yes.
And it will drive the point home. I hate COP26. I hate it because I'm sitting on the largest, the world's largest untouched. That is the key word. Untouched coal reserves under my feet right now. Well, I'm not in Botswana right now, but under my
philosophically, I understand.
Yes. What do we do? I mean, should we just leave it there, bury it there, or? And yet, we are far from reaching the the UN millennial what goals or socioeconomic upliftment.
Development goals. Yes.
Yes. We are far from social we are far from the status of being called. We have uplifted ourselves off. I would say bordering the poverty lines, and then yet, by the way, Botswana is considered one of the well-off in Africa, but we can still see that we have a lot of room for improvement, even for our other African citizenry. What do? We have the largest untouched coal reserves in the world. And not only that, there is a rating. That's why I said I used to be a computer scientist for the past 4 months. I'm now a chemical engineer. There is a rating of coal in the world. It's rated by joules per weight. Now, by that, it measures the quality of coal. So the more joules you have per weight, the less the less you are toxic, or the less you will
impurities.
Yeah. It's got less impurities. So we are one, underselling that kind of coal quality. Two, what do? I mean, we have to convince us. Unfortunately for Botswana, if we were Nigeria with a population of about 220 million, Botswana is only 2 million, by the way. I think we will be heard more. We will be heard more of our voice of against COP26 initiative. What do we do when we have 220 million citizens on top of this coal reserves, and they are still below, on average, below poverty lines?
Poverty line.
Now that was just the tone I wanted.
You've answered the question without answering the question, but I see what you've done there. I think it's very, very smart, because it's like I think it's almost a question for everyone to respond to in the room, really.
Okay. Go on, a quick one, Chair. I know I've taken some time. Now, at the university, at our university, we are trying to research on bioproducts and services that are greener from the same coal, rather than burning it. Good. What do we do with it as it is? Because it's huge. Okay, thank you, Chair.
I think that's fantastic. I really appreciate that. So I guess the point is, people should just say, well, stop doing this. Well, if my life depends on it, if I stop doing it, what else should I do? That balance has to be there. There has to be global equity or equilibrium, or else it's a waste of time. It's easy for America to say, well, stop doing it. Well, they've got other alternative ways of doing things. But a country like, you're just telling me, look at the huge deposit of coal in Botswana, but they can't use it. But many, many years ago, the UK, the US, Europe used their own and increased their economies, and they had so much development and messed everything up and spoiled the world. And then they say, oh, we've changed our mind. We are now good people and we are now loving. Okay, Africa, don't use yours. Isn't that the height of, it's actually annoying thinking about it. Isn't that the height of which word should I use, Kirk? I know you agree with me, but isn't that the height of absolute, I lack words to describe it. But that's the point exactly, though. That's the point exactly. That's the point of the focus of concentration and discussion. Shouldn't there be equilibrium? Shouldn't there be a justification? Even the $100 billion they promised to give to developing economies, but they haven't even remitted it. Anyway, I think we'll stop at this point before I lose my cool, because it's actually listening to you guys speak about it, it brings the message home very, very clearly. So I think we can wrap up here. Are there any questions in the room? Let's see. Anybody making any comments? Let's see. Any questions in the room? Okay, any commentaries? Government should begin to change curriculum. I like that. Curriculum upgrade is important. Thank you, Ellen. Siame says curriculum innovation projects is very important. Akwawo says leadership at different level of governance has to play a big role. Eunice, I see you. You don't really think we could place a blame, because we all contribute to this, and I think I agree with you. Everyone has some contributing factor to this discussion. Ebenezer, I see you. It's possible because of the approach you are using to address the issue. It can be possible if there is good dialogue and finding appropriate alternatives. Okay, I'm going to just ask just 2 multimeter questions and wrap it up. Paul, oh yes, please. I think Akan's was looking for the arrogance. That's the word, Paul, I'm looking for. Arrogance and hypocrisy. Thank you, Paul, for helping me and for lending me some English, because it's getting to me and it's very annoying. So, but I think I will cool down now and let's take 2 interactive questions with the audience and then we can wrap it up. So, Alan, can you paste just the first 2 questions, and then we can wrap it up today. So, if you look at the chat section, you will see 2 questions. I'd like you to respond to quickly, then we can call it a day. Fantastic. And the first question is, what now? We've had the discussion round. What do you think is the most important factor needed to fight against climate change, in your view? I mean, we can fight at it at different levels, but in your mind, in your view, what is the most important factor needed to fight against it? Let's go. So is it global cooperation? Is it funding? Personal convictions? Government support? I'm sure there are many other ways of fighting against it, but in your mind, what is the most important based on the options you have at the moment? Okay. So that's, oh, wow. So I can see global cooperation is topping the list. Then we have government support. Global cooperation is topping the list. That's interesting. And I think if you ask me honestly, Africans need to unite as well and speak with one voice. I think that's very, very important. At the moment, the continent feels disconnected, disengaged in itself. And so it becomes more difficult to speak with one voice to the global community. I say, and it's obviously clear, global cooperation is chatting the way. And I think I agree with everyone in the room. Global cooperation, because climate change affects the globe. It might have developed from somewhere, but the impact can be felt somewhere else. And so there has to be global cooperation. It's the reason why COP26 was put together. And there's been many COPs, 25, COP24, and it's just been on and on and on. But I guess within global cooperation, there's need for equity, justice, tranquility, and just open honesty about the actual topic on the ground. Thank you very much, guys. Fantastic. And then the last question. It's a simple question. Have you felt the impact of climate change in your country? Yes or no? Everybody in the room. Because just to show to you that it affects everybody. Let's see whether I'm right. Whether it's an assumption. Have you, in one form or the other, felt the impact of climate change in your country? And I can see in the room here that I can count at least participants from over 7 to 8 or 9 African countries. So if you are all saying yes, 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 it proves the point that it's a global issue that requires global cooperation. Fantastic. Thanks, Wales. Thank you, Baishil, Global Cooperation. Thanks, Wales, for that. Thank you, Paul McKenna, for helping moderate the session. I think it was very informative and engaging, even though it ended up with anger and annoyance. But obviously, this is what drives transformation. There has to be people speaking about these things for the right change to happen. Thank you very much. So I'm going to call on Craig to give his final words, and then we can wrap it up. I'm putting you on the spot, boss. Let's go.
Thank you very much, Akan. I mean, listening, when we were connected, of course, and we had some challenges here, the conversation was really very, very interesting. I have to say that I'm going to wrap up with quite a pessimistic note. And this is not the first time that I've said this. I think that the issues of climate change and the resulting impacts are enormous. And I think it's good that the governments and interested parties from around the world gather to discuss these. They need to be discussed. But I really do worry about the quality or the lack of leadership in this, and the lack of actually putting people's money where their mouth is, really, to actually make a significant impact in the short term. We're coming up with these statements of, oh, let's end deforestation by 2030. Let's be carbon neutral by 2030, 2040, 2050. Let's not use coal anymore by 2060, depending on which country you're coming from. These, I think, I remain skeptical about the real motivation and the real will to actually implement these significant changes, because it's one thing a government saying it, or a load of governments saying it. It's quite another to actually try to implement this at local, regional, national, and international levels. So I'm going to sign off on that. I'd just like to thank everybody for their fantastic contributions. I apologise for the technical challenges that Akan and I have suffered this morning or this afternoon, depending where you are in the world. But yeah, really very interesting, very interactive, and I'd just like to thank everybody for their time and their inputs. Thank you. Back to you, Akan.
Thank you very much. I don't want to end on a pessimistic note, so I'm going to say something, because I don't want people leaving the room going, so what's the point? Yeah, I mean, obviously there are challenges, but I guess it comes with the individual. So what are you doing in your little corner? It's about those minimal changes. Why are we holding this webinar in the first place? Is to get people talking about this. Because then the more you speak about it, the more it comes to the front burner of topical issues on the ground. It's Africa, it's our continent, it's our living, it's about us. And so in your own little corner, your university, your company, what are you doing towards the green economy discussion or conversation? And that's how real change can happen. It has to be coalesced. It has to come from a point of integration, a point of transformation to actually make that change happen. Because if we wait for government, it's not going to happen. Wait for industry, it's not going to happen. Individuals have a contribution to this discussion. And on that note, I hope you leave today thinking about it in a more positive light, that we believe it will happen eventually. But ultimately, have a lovely week and a great weekend. And thank you so much for the organizers. Thank you, Paul, Alan, Samuel, Diane, and all the panelists. Thank you, Dimani. Thank you, Wills. I'm very grateful to Gloria and Emmanuel for being incredible panelists and for kind of putting forth your views and perspective in this discussion. Have a lovely evening, and God bless all. Bye-bye.